Hello friend, and welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Pot-cast by Blue Nose Trading. I'm your host, Tori Solis, and today I'm going to be talking with John Campbell of FCS Clayworks in Garland, Texas. John is a longtime friend and past fellow market mate who set out to start his own ceramic community studio. He's working incredibly hard, and I'm very thankful that he was able to make this time to chat with me. Today we talked about slip casting, wheel throwing, functional pottery as a style, running a community studio, teaching pottery, making lidded vessels, making custom orders, and more. It's a great chat today, so let's dive right in. I am here with John Campbell of Full Circle Studio here locally to my area, and his studio is in Garland. John, thank you for joining me today. So let's get started with, how did you get your hands in clay?
Short story is I took a class in high school. My brother was going to this school, the private school, and taking classes and making ceramic pots and giving them to my mother. And then he gave a casserole dish to her. And I was like, wait, I can go to that school? Mom, can I go to that school? I want to play with clay. So this is something that happened to me in 8th grade that I really wanted to jump into it somehow. So I went to St. Stephen's and St. Agnes School in Alexandria, Virginia, and I got to take part in a really cool ceramics. The teacher had a lot of pottery wheels, unlike some school systems. So it was exciting.
That's sweet that you got to learn to throw early. Did you have any particular teachers or mentors or heroes along the way who really stood out to you?
Well, I did take quite a break from pottery. I really only had 2 people show me the ropes is really what I would say. I mean, it's not like you're getting into structure of pots and, glazed chemistry very much in a high school program. So not typically, at least. So I'll say that Craig Owens, I believe he's teaching back in Georgia now, but he taught at that high school and he taught both my brother and I. To be honest with you, I think my brother still would be better than me if he actually practiced pottery. He's very good. But he went off to study physics instead. Either way, Craig Owens and he just kind of showed me what I needed to know at that time. And then I went off and did a wheel on the side while the rest of the class commenced. And the same thing kind of happened in college. And yeah, I think that more so my influence has been watching a lot of people around now that I'm later in life, because I took a large break from clay.
Yeah. Did you take clay in college as well?
Yes, I was in college for a year and a half at Roanoke College in Southwest Virginia. I was attracted to that school. One of the reasons why is because they had a gas kiln and the program seemed really good. Yeah, my teacher and he actually was my academic advisor as well. And truth is I wasn't ready to study on that level, and I really just wanted to mess with clay. So I went to the college to study business, potentially minor in ceramics, and play a little lacrosse while I was getting through it all. And I ended up not playing lacrosse. My grades were terrible. But I seemed to find myself in the pottery studio, even hours that I shouldn't have been. I was talking security guards to allow me access and, couldn't keep up the grades to stay in the studio.
Well, it sounded like you knew where you needed to be, though. You had
That's
the little push even back then, to where you could reflect on it later and be like, okay, I need to be in the clay.
Yep.
So how did you develop your style of work, and how would you describe your style of work?
Well, developing my style of work came by, I'll be honest with you, it was just what I liked to do from the beginning, and call it grunt pottery, call it, typical, just to laugh about it a little bit. But I wanted to make functional ware and your tableware. I wanted to learn how to execute pottery on a level that I almost didn't need to think about it. And just throwing off the wheel was always my inclination with, making round shapes. And my skill set is really what I tend to practice wheel throwing. But I will say, as soon as I started branching out and learning slip casting and doing drape molds with slabs, that's when I became a better wheel thrower, to be honest with you. I understood the material on a different level. So Yeah, my style is very simple and clean, and I definitely just do some of the stuff that you might see behind us here.
Yeah, I love your style. Simple and
It's,
clean is simple and clean, but it's difficult to execute it and do well sometimes because when your intention is simple and clean, anything not simple and clean sticks out. So I think it's a really great style.
Thank you. I think what you just said is not thought about quite a lot, and very true.
I mean, when you do simple and clean, it kind of comes down to the weight, And I've held your work; it's an excellent weight. But sometimes it looks simple and clean, but it's kind of heavy on the bottom, and it's just like, okay, well the walls are straight, but like this weighs like 5 pounds.
One of my favorite parts about making pottery is sitting at the trimming wheel. So even if I don't stick it, I like to make sure it's just right. I think the shape's important. That's the way I was taught by the few people that I was with. But also, I watched a lot of old videos back in the day, even on pottery, anything I can find on the internet. And I think Japanese style is very important. One of the most important things is that the pot makes sense from the foot to the rim. Design and flow are very important. Just simplicity for
I agree. I like function too. And when I went to school, I kind of had a similar journey to you, where like I studied business and ended up taking a lot of art classes on the side, but my classes were in painting. But I remember like we would learn about high art and all that weird stuff, and I would always look at it and I'd be like, okay, but what does it do?
yeah.
Like what? what but what's it for? And they're like, it's for art, it's to look sit on a shelf. I'm like, okay, see, there, at least that answered the question. It's for sitting on a shelf. Great, now I know what it's for.
Right. Somebody said to me one time, if you can look at it and if you can't figure out how to execute it, functional or not, that's impressive, right?
Right, exactly.
Or at least it should be. You should have an appreciation for it just because it's like, I can't do that. I can't figure
Yeah.
out how to do that. I can't think how to do that right now. That guy did something I can't do. That should be impressive. That, and artists, that I think that's what they're going for a lot of times, and that might be missed. But with my stuff, as you know, simple, and a lot of people just go, that looks like that thing I saw at that shelf at that one store that one time. So what I've done has been done before. But yeah, the functionality of it, I'm not breaking any ground here, but if you pick it up and you know pottery, I think that you'll have an appreciation for
I
it.
think your work is great. I remember that your bonsai pots at the good local market was one of the first time I experienced bonsai pottery by somebody who was like a real person, like in this country, making pots. And I still need to get one. We need to do a trade or something. I loved your work, and it was one of the main reasons that I wanted to get into bonsai pots. I was like, I want to make those differently, but that's so cool that like someone's making them. I thought that was just the coolest thing.
Well, I get to talk about your bonsai pots because you do them differently than I do. So,
Oh,
yeah.
everybody does them so differently. I've been interviewing artists all around that make these bonsai pots. It's just crazy what everybody's doing as far as their process and what they think is important and like what they're aiming for and what kind of trees they're making pots for. It's wild.
It's important.
So you have been running this full FCS studio, FCF Clayworks. That has been looked like a handful.
It's a big beast. Yeah, we call it affectionately Clayworks. FCS
Okay.
is Full Circle Studios, which is another business, and it's more related to my pottery solely. I hope to expand upon that in the future. And with FCS Clayworks, sounds a little confusing. That's the new business, and that's in Garland, Texas. And yes, it is a handful, but
So what inspired you initially to get a public studio up and running?
well, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of fell into the way I make pots. I make functional pottery because I thought that that's what people wanted in my area, and I always liked making it in new ways. So now I make functional pottery. I realized quickly it wasn't as fulfilling as I would like it to be. When you have to monetize your work to grow and to build something, exploration isn't always the answer. And so, out of necessity, I fell into a functional pottery role. And end all be all, I really enjoyed the idea of teaching. When I was younger, I took this class and I was thinking about how I would do it differently, though my teacher was fantastic. I've never seen anybody like him since. And Not that I've been in a ton of school systems, but I mean, I've met a lot of teachers, a lot of instructors, and Craig Owens was magnificent.
What would you say makes a good teacher of clay?
Oh, good question. Not to have a loaded answer. The patience, patience. You have a lot of people that are going to ask things of you, and you may not be able to juggle a lot of questions at once, especially on the beginner level. You have to always realize that no matter where you are in clay as a teacher, you have to realize these people are coming to you and they don't have the groundwork that you have. So you might say terms that they're like, and all of a sudden you have to notice this gloss look. Things start going past them, and you're like, all right, let me rein it back. Being clear about what you're trying to teach before you start teaching is important. And then lastly, just to be fun. Yeah. Like we're
Yeah.
there to excite them about this. Those are the three main things.
What challenges have you run into in getting a studio set up? I imagine nothing like that goes off without any little hitch.
Oh, yes. A person like me will always think they can do a lot more than they can. And getting people that are as excited about this as I am, I think I've found them. Yeah. But this is something that it does, I don't mean to be cheesy, but it takes a village, you know?
It's absolutely a community endeavor.
Even the members in the classes, the people there, if they have a good time, I hope to talk about it. You know?
There are so many benefits to being in a community studio. I live like an hour away from the studio on in good traffic, so like it's tough for me to get up there. But man, the community and the idea sharing and the education and the access to just equipment is such a great thing, and I'm just so happy to see that you're doing it because the community needs a community studio.
We are lucky to have more than one in the area now. So not just in the Dallas area, but it is a growing thing. This is the most exciting ceramics has ever been to the general public.
I know, it's good. It's great for clay. It's great for clay artists. It's great for the artistic community. I think it says good things about the world a little bit when artists are able to art and not die of poverty. That's
Yeah,
always great. I mean, it's not luxurious, but you know, the fact that we have the privilege to be in a time when we can realistically somewhat do this is pretty amazing. Something to be grateful for.
yes. It's yeah, the market system has more potters and more options to see pottery than ever. And that's I don't know, yeah, it's just great. It's nice to see a lot of people having the guts to put it out there, right? That's
Yeah,
a hard thing.
yeah, for sure. And there's so many things to make out of clay. Just so many things. No one could ever make all of them. But we all make mugs. All of us.
Yes. Yeah. It all starts with a simple vessel,
I
right?
know it.
Yep.
So, what is your vision of success for the studio?
Oh,
Like, what do you want to? Where are we going with this? Just building this giant community of clay-loving people where we can all exist in harmony? That sounds sweet.
it does. My goal from getting away, like to be honest with you, I have a home studio sitting there waiting for me. I share it with my partner Erin, and she is getting to explore and find her story in clay. And my goal, my point of bringing that up is I could be at home making pots, y'all. Like I could just be there making pots. I could even be teaching classes there, small ones like I was doing. This thing, I want to be a resource. Now, I didn't finish school for pottery, but what I did do is buckle down and learn as many different things about the ways that I make pots and all the trials and tribulations, as well as the successes. And I personally, as well as this place that I built with a great team, I want it to be looked at as a resource. I don't know if there will be a stop. I want to grow enough, at least, that people from other states and countries are hearing about this place. My goal is to anything that is brought to me that is like, man, I've been looking for this and haven't been able to find it. It's gonna click for me, and I'm gonna try and consider it. So yeah, I want to have this place a very resourceful place, and I mean it's already 4,000 plus square feet. I'm looking at other buildings and I'm not there yet. Like I can't even start considering that on a financial level. We just opened, but Anyways, I can't help it. I want to.
Yeah. Like one day at a time. But you definitely have got the skills to get there. You're super personable, and I think a lot of the building and being resourceful is drawing upon the skills and abilities of the network and the clay community around you, and being the kind of uplifting and magnetic person you are, and able to bring these people out of their home studios to help others. You know, if you find people who have these extra niche skills and you bring them out and you're like, hey, I know a guy, and you've got the skills to know all the guys.
You're too kind. Too kind.
You got that. And I think eventually it'll get to the point where, like, it'll be somewhat self-sustaining through its own community network, where you will be able to hopefully step back into your own practice to explore a little bit more.
Yes, that is the goal. If I wanted to get as far out as 5, 10 years, whatever, I plan on this place being able to be its own hive. Like beehives, you don't really have to do that much for them. This should be able to self-sustain itself. Yes, there's a group of people already here that are helping me manage it, and I am getting to get back to making just a little bit, but exploring is another level right now. It's make what I can when I can, and I think I already have some things to do besides playing with new ideas. But the main goal is that this community is established, and I think it already is. We just want to grow it.
I don't think that should be a problem at all. The time is right. The idea is right. You're in the right place. It's all good stuff.
Garland, Texas is coming up, man. I don't mean to be easy about it, but they're putting a lot of art and culture effort into this little city.
And Dallas has been fancy pants for a while. I was kind of looking into some of the stuff, history and culture of Dallas as a city. It's been art world up here for a minute.
I totally agree, and it's one of the biggest majors. It is in that grouping of the biggest cities in the United States. So I don't think that the pottery draw has been very significant. Like your North Carolina pottery has been in Texas for a long time on a technical level because of toilets, and the toilets came to be. They were all manufactured right here and then kind of got dispersed out. So clay's been here for a long time, but not in, we're still building on our community here in Dallas, Texas, as far as potters are concerned, though it's been here and established. And I don't think that other cities look at it that way. I think it's all of our jobs to like, and now is the time, like you said.
Yep. We're here in Dallas and we've got clay, just so everybody knows out there. We've got cool potters.
Yeah.
So I have been going to the meetings for the Bonsai Society of Dallas, and I went to the club auction and I saw your pots at the auction, and then they told me you did the demo. How was that? Tell me about that experience doing the demo for the club.
You always know when somebody's asking questions at the end that they took some interest, and they were coming at me. And it was great to be there representing FCS Clayworks, and Aaron and I went up there and knocked it out of the park, I thought. I was nervous. It was one of my first demos in front of that kind of a group. The Bonsai Society isn't a bunch of they're established people in their own lives. I mean, there was doctors and people in their 60s and 70s that have had full-on careers that are really into trees. And so they were asking me questions that, I know pottery, and I kind of know how to make basic pottery for bonsais, and I think they're all right. But they're asking me technical questions that it was just really cool, because I don't know what I was expecting when I went in. I expected people that knew a lot about trees, but they were really interested in the pottery, because in bonsai, it's 50-50. They're both really important, the tree and the pot.
I totally agree. And there's enough people out there making pots that we can have a whole podcast, at least for one season. And then after that, I might have to interview just some normal potters. We'll see where it goes. It's going to evolve and change over time. They had a great time, though, at the meeting. I heard great stuff about your exhibit and your demo. They really liked it. Everyone thought it was really wonderful. And it was really cool that you donated the pots, too. They used those to raise money for the club.
I saw that you had a bunch out, too.
Oh, yeah. I volunteered on that day, but I kept my proceeds. I mean, they got a portion, but...
Got it.
So what kind of trees are you keeping? Do you have any right now?
Oh man, I'm actually working towards building another little starter setup over here at FCS Clayworks, and
Ooh.
yeah, I had to focus quite a bit over here. I had trees, but I started selling them, to be honest with you, the few that I was maintaining. Currently, I have some basics around me or at home that are a little easier to tend to, but I've had some seeds stashed up where I want to grow some juniper types because growing them isn't too tough. And I think it would be cool to have like a place where people could come and get starter plants and some starter pottery, and then maybe they could lean into some larger pots if they had other trees that needed them. So I'm hoping to make that available here at Clayworks in the near future.
There's this really cool idea that's happening up in the northeast of the United States called the Bonsai Bar. And like they take bonsai artists and they go to bars and they all like do a demo where people learn about trees. I don't know, maybe
What's
that could be, they're just a little small business. Maybe that could be some sort of idea for to look into. I interviewed a potter who's also a bonsai artist, JAS Potts, and he was talking about how he was working with them.
Got it. I'm going to look into that, and I think it is an awesome idea. Yeah, I have plans to hopefully start up with the Bonsai Society meeting was held at North Haven Gardens, which is in Dallas, and I have plans to be working with their representative to be there, doing some few more demos here in the
Yeah,
near future. So I think to focus on plants in ways that people can make planter pots without a pottery wheel. You don't need a pottery wheel to make pots. No, you can make them in your kitchen counter,
yep.
and so I plan to start teaching a few demos, and I think it would be like that. And so it's kind of leaning in that direction, but we've got our own space here. We might as well get some here too.
That'd be sweet. I look forward to those. So, outside of the bonsai pots, you like to make dinnerware. What would you say you make most often, or what is your favorite thing to make?
Oh, I think that making things that are meant for very old uses is cool. So pots like fermentation pots
Those are
are
cool.
challenging for a lot of people. Lidded vessels in general have a lot of addition to me as I look at them. So yeah, matching a lid to a vessel and making it fit just right is always fun for me. I made some small jars recently and I had to match because I had made the wrong size of lid for the wrong jar. And then I did it again by accident. And this is why you write notes, folks. And then I just made new lids for jars that I had made 2 years ago. I had a set of 40 of them just sitting around that didn't have lids. They're little tiny jars. And I made the lids and then I made it right and I trimmed them just a little bit more and now they don't fit just right. They're just a little too shy of snugging up to the rim, the gallery of the other vessel. And I'm kicking myself. I'm going to go back and make more lids. My point is that I just like making things fit just right. And I think it's when it makes sense.
Jars are super satisfying, especially like you're saying when you can get it just right. That can be either super satisfying or incredibly frustrating, depending on the day you're having.
Very true. There's a lot of variables, especially when you're matching things from far a long time ago. You know, your clay could be different.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine. Like if I had a jar that didn't have a lid anymore, I think it would just that it would be done. I'd be like, all right, well, you're done now.
Yeah.
You're now a toothbrush holder. Congratulations.
Love it.
So slip casting, I could have you on for an entire episode of slip casting. Could you just walk me through the process of slip casting something? I know a lot of, maybe not your bonsai pots, but there are a lot of forms that are slip cast. So it would be interesting just to have that process described so that we can understand it a little better.
Well, with bonsai pots, there's a lot of things that make them unique. Typically, there's a large foot setting and a nice bold rim, or it's, off round. A lot of bonsai pots are not the round shape, and that's something that I tend to focus on. But with slip casting, and I haven't done much slip casting of bonsais except for this set of minis that I made. They're like mentioning those starter plant ideas that I have had. I've made smaller bonsai pots. One of the main focuses that I've learned is in the beginning with those starter pots, you want to have a little bit deeper soil sometimes. So they're different than most bonsai pots. They're round, they're taller. And so, anyways, moving on to slip casting in general, the process, a lot of people think it makes it easier. What it can do is make you more efficient. I think that there's just as many steps to making the pot via slip cast as there would be if I just took a hunk of clay and made it off the wheel or hand built it with slabs. I give a lot of respect to slip casters because it actually, in a way, is more work because then you're expected to keep up higher numbers if you're doing it that way. Not really, but at the same time, I guess that's the way I look at it. But I've slip cast a lot of functional ware as well in less bonsai pots, just to be transparent. But my point being is slip casting is still, and then you have to learn how to make the mold. And that's the next level. You don't have to, you can find somebody that does it, but if you know how to do it, you save a lot of money. And it's just a whole nother thing to learn, really. That's the end of it. There's a lot to it. I have a lot of respect for it.
Me too. I was glad you broke that down as someone who has experience with it. I have no experience with it, but every time I've looked it up, I'm like, I have no space or time or desire to learn how to do any of that. So God bless y'all out there. Slip casting, that is a real job. I'd rather just throw.
Yeah, you have to even keep up the slip. A lot of people think that it's just like a bucket of paint or something that just kind of, you just mix it, you got to make sure it's right, just like ready clay before you go to the wheel.
Yep. And it sounds horrible. And just I can't imagine doing it by hand. I've seen people have these amazing tools that make it look somewhat better, but even then you have to put your giant slip mixer, Omatic 3000, somewhere, so it just takes up a ton of space. Or if you're doing it by hand, you're gonna be like swole by the end of it. Like, none of that. That's too much.
Yeah, I think I have a little of both. I actually have a larger vat. It's not huge, but it's like starter production slip casting setup,
Yeah.
But and it has a motor and a pump. But sometimes I actually prefer the bucket system, like you mentioned, just doing it all very simple.
Another thing I didn't love, as far as when I was looking at it as an option, was that the speckles. You have to basically use like white, ideally, and maybe red. But for casting bodies, there's nothing really speckled.
There are ways to do it. I haven't practiced it, but you can possibly do it, execute it in the clay.
Yeah.
I think that staining the clay is also an option at any time. You can make colored slip. But at the same time, it just comes in. You can get terracotta slip, but it's more finicky. It's harder to work with. That's way faster, I think, than normal stone slips. Yeah, they don't cast as well than terracotta slip. A lot of people use it. That's what a lot of those bonsai pots are terracotta slip pots.
Interesting. Do you know if they have terracotta absorption? I'd love to test one. Be curious about that.
I might be able to help you get a test piece.
Because, well, I don't know, every clay's different, but the terracottas that I tested, like the Longhorn Red, did not pass outside standards, for freeze safety. It would just be interesting to see what those are testing out as, because I'm just curious. I just like to ask complicated questions.
Oh, I love it. And remember when I was saying at the Bonsai Society that you're a member of, this is what it was like. I was like, let me think about it. It wasn't just like, how'd you get into pottery, huh?
Yeah.
I haven't worked with a lot of terracotta slip. I bet you the person that sells it, though, would have a better answer than I do.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I always just test it.
You're smart.
I try to use my new...
A lot of potters don't do that, and they're quick to say, with functional wear specifically, dishwasher safe, man. And they haven't run any kind of testing on it whatsoever. I don't know, I think it's responsible if you're going to sell it that way.
I do too, but also I think that there's levels of where people want their vitrification, and I don't want to open that can of worms, but it has to be, for outside use, for it to be freeze safe, it has to be less than 5 vitrification, 5% absorption, less than 5. So it can be 3 and still be freeze safe due to for the ASTM standards for outdoor use. It has to be less than 5. So most things are fine.
ASTM stand for?
Let me go look it up. It's on Digital Fire.
Just curious.
No, I just haven't actually looked it up.
just so you know, Trinity is potentially working on a new clay that has a
Ooh.
better vitrification point at a lower temp. It's easier to reach. But I will also, Trinity, by the way, is Trinity Ceramic Supply for all
Yes.
those people that are not shopping for clay here in Dallas. You might listen to this. That is our store. We love that place.
I do too. I use all their clays.
Yeah.
I like the armadillo too. Some of those are really nice. And those are in Austin, so it's not
Not too
too.
far.
It's still paying Texas sales tax. We're still
Right.
doing our bit.
What I like about that is, and I tried to do this when I first got back into pottery. I mentioned earlier I took a 17-year break. I didn't get back into pottery again until about 6 years ago. And that's when I really took it seriously. Before that, I was making heavy bowls, heavy vases. And nothing wrong with those, but it's not what I was going for. And
Yeah.
so just picked this back up and worked really hard at it real quick. But when I first picked my clay, pottery came about. That's why North Carolina has a lot of potters. Traditionally, is because there's good clay in the ground.
Yep, that's where it's made.
Yeah. So I tried to keep with that theme. Like I found it in my backyard kind of deal. So whatever China makes, that's what I'm going to use predominantly.
Just going back, the ASTM standards are the American Society for Testing and Materials, and they're a global voluntary consensus of standards used by individuals, companies, and other institutions around the world. So they do things like metal standards, outdoor ceramic standards, plastic standards, glass standards, like what the standard for the material should be for commercial use.
Great. Thank you for that.
I'm glad I didn't know. I hadn't looked it up. I'm just like, someone made standards. Digital Fire said these are the standards. We believe Digital Fire.
It's a great resource. If you don't know about it, Google anything pottery related and put .digital fire at the end, and you'll find it's kind of like our Reddit in a way.
Yeah. I went on a deep dive because I was like, wait a minute, I like this clay and it's got like a 2% absorption. Am I allowed to use this? Every pot I've ever seen is not stoneware. There has to be more to this. So I did the deep dive into all that stuff.
I get to watch you dive into it like from afar, right? I remember meeting you and talking to you about bonsais the first time,
Yeah.
Market mates, set up at the same place weekly. So we got to know each other. And then I was just sitting back going, look at this. She's doing a YouTube channel. She's doing all this stuff. It's been cool to watch, Tori. So I believe that you did do a deep dive. That's for sure.
It's a lot of fun. I like making the content, and I was thinking, why do a podcast? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't really what. I just want to make a talk radio show. This is my Bonsai Pot talk radio show. I'm not trying to get nothing except for questions answered. It's just a spirit of curiosity.
Yes.
And I like to listen to these kinds of podcasts, so I know that someone might like to listen to it, just the chatty kind of podcast.
Yes. Love
and
it.
learning and meeting all these different people and being like, there's a personality over there behind that Instagram. Wow, we love that. Well, your personality's not a secret. Anyone who's been on your Instagram for longer than a week knows that you are a big character.
Yeah, when it's time to make pots, though, that's one of the things I love about it is it takes everything from me in a very positive way. It's not just my money. It's about more or energy to wedge it and get it ready, but it's all consuming for me. And I've tried meditation, I've tried yoga, I try to go to sleep at night, and it's just a constant revolving door in my brain. But at the same time, when I get involved in throwing pots the way I throw pots, it's very therapeutic for me. So I calm down quite a bit.
I agree. It's a lifestyle, too. Because of the timing with clay, there's a lot that you have to work your life around. You have to know X amount of days I'm going to be trimming, and you have your eye on a lot of different things at once, so
Yes.
it creates and especially when you get into a production system where you're producing at a pretty steady level, you just get into a flow with your entire life and your entire day, and how that whole, the order of everything gets set up around it.
It's a chaotic routine. It totally is. It's like you ever watch a chef in a kitchen?
Yep.
It's relatable, like a big fine dining open kitchen. I'm not comparing myself to one of those chefs. I'm just saying.
I mean, you're both artists. I think there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, I think that watching them work their station is one of the coolest things. And I worked in restaurants for 17 years when I wasn't with clay. I dropped out of clay when I dropped out of college, basically. I bought my own pottery wheel, tried to be a potter at my home, and then I couldn't put it together. So I got into restaurants and got back to it. But the whole time I'm sitting there watching these chefs, and I'm like, that guy's working a studio, you know?
Mm-hmm. There's parallels across all of these art forms if you just sit there and look at the way that people get into their craft and their creative process. It's all there's parallels. Of course everyone's not doing the same thing, but they kind of are.
Yes, absolutely. They're working their station. I call mine lighten up the studio. You know, I'll position things in order in the day so that I can maximize every minute possibly. And obviously there's distractions. You take calls, you go out, take lunch, but you start with the right thing, then it's ready while you're doing something else, and then you can transition back. And yeah, getting the pug mill going while you have slab work and slip casting and your wedge in clay and getting ready to sit at the wheel for the second half. It's pretty fun to get it all done.
I agree. I always say that doing too many things at once is one of my special skills.
I've also heard I thought it was great, but ADD is my superpower, you know?
Yep. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed. Have you?
Long time ago, and I'm sure of it. It helps me. But once again, I'm more focused when I'm doing this than other things. Like,
yep.
If I tried to do the same thing when I was learning, I don't know, how to install sprinkler systems, you know, I'm just throwing something out. I probably thought, whatever, man, I'll pack the pattern.
So, with your glazes, you're making all your own glazes. Are there any commercial glazes that you like to use, or do you mostly just mix them all for yourself in your studio?
This is admittedly one of the things that I need to work on the most, is getting to know glaze chemistry. And those are the things that you do get in continued ed in college, or working for someone or under someone that does take care of their own glazes. So admittedly, I've got about 50-50. I'm trying to work more towards all from recipes that I've either found or created on my own just by adjusting current recipes. I'm not trying to do anything groundbreaking. I'm just trying to have a better understanding.
Yep.
And there's a lot of resources out there. Look for it on Dot Digital Fire, like we mentioned. Matt Katz is a great workshop. Matt and his wife Rosie. The Katz family has a lot of different workshops out there. And so, but one of them is this glaze chemistry. And I've been in the room when somebody was taking it and got to peek over their shoulders and was like, yeah, I'm going to do that like that, So, yeah, I've relied a little bit on commercial glazes for a little too long. And now I'm branching back out, figuring out some glaze colors that I like, and how they work with other glazes is most important to me.
I use some commercial glazes, and I like to test the commercial glazes, especially for my YouTube, because I feel like those are really beneficial to some people out there who only use the commercial glazes. And then I like to mix a lot of glazes too, but I use a lot of Mako stroke and coats because sometimes I just think it's silly to reinvent the primary colors. Like, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to spend all the time to reinvent red when I could just get Mako stroke and coat red and I know it's going to behave itself. For certain things, certain detail work and application, mostly in my sculptural stuff.
Right.
But then when it comes to like just surface glazes, I am very interested in growing micro crystals. Not macro crystals, not the big ones, that flower out, that run like crazy, but the micro mats. The ones that like form a matte crystal. A good example of one is like Carmen's turquoise.
Yes.
I really want to work with. So I have those, and I've been tweaking and messing with things, and I've got the John Britt's glaze chemistry book, and I've just like, I'll go in and look at read the description for each ingredient and then think about it. And that's how I've been unpacking my glazes and trying to mess with them. But the Rose and Matt Katz, the Ceramic Materials Workshop, I listen to For Flux Sake podcast. I love it. I learn something new every time. Great. It's like the best.
For Flux Sake, I forgot about that. Yeah, I just started listening to that randomly. On my drive to work, I don't really listen to much, not even radio, but it's helpful, definitely.
I love that podcast. I love podcasts. That's how I ended up wanting to have one. I listen to so many.
It's a good thing to do while you're at work, so you're not thinking about the things that are just spinning out of control in your mind. If you can make pots and learn something at the same time, I think it's a good idea.
I love, that's my favorite thing is like I can work in my studio and listen to books and podcasts and like I feel like I'm like super multitasking. I'm like I got handles drying, I got slabs drying, I got pots that are ready to trim, I've got stuff in the damp box, I've got a podcast going, I'm learning about things, I've like everything's at once, just like super speed. Gotta go real fast. Listen to my podcast at 1.25 speed. Yeah.
That's right. You could speed it up. Some of them do talk a little too slow.
So do you do custom orders for people? I know a lot of people like to have bonsai pots made to specific sizes. Are you open to those kind of orders?
Yes, I've done a few of those. I get as close as I can, of course.
Of course.
What I always tell people though is like we mentioned, glazes. A lot of it is it's not just like picking a paint swatch. You know, you got to figure a lot out in order to make the glaze look like somebody else's. And that all being said, the reason I really like getting into making glazes is because it's more, you don't have to pay those prices of, you know, those pints and those, you know, good dry mix materials that you have to buy from the commercial store. Once you get on a level of having your own bags of materials, which takes space, of course, then you can start playing a little bit more. And that's a big part of custom work as well. That's why I'm bringing it up. If you can get close to what they've seen and they're like, hey, I saw this pot one time, you know, I just wanted to see if you could make your version of that pot, but the glaze has got to look similar. You got to think about the clay color, the glaze, all those things. When it's functional, where like I do a lot of stuff, it's more like people are more inclined to use the glazes that you have. Mm-hmm. I think that custom work is strenuous because something always goes wrong. I think anybody that does custom work will say the same thing. So always make more than what you need. And I do by far. I make 3 times what my order is a lot of times. So even if it's one bonsai pot, I'm making 3 to 5 of them. Because if it doesn't work out, I find the best one, and then those all go on the shelf or the second shelf. You know?
See, I don't do customs. But I love that you do. And there's so much that goes into them, and I think you have clearly explained all of it. It's a lot.
Something always goes wrong. It's part of what I love about it, you know? It's like, dang, I didn't just... And it could be what you did, it could be something that the kiln did, a variable that you didn't consider. But, you know, man, the last plate set I made, it was only 8 plates, but it had 8 matching bowls and 8 of this and 8 of that. But the last plate set I made, it was a different way of making them than I've done before. I usually make feet. This one was 12 inches spread, straight up walls, and a completely flat bottom. Nothing, no extra footing on it whatsoever. And I kept getting this weird cracking that I'd not seen before. It wasn't just a normal S crack. They were like scattered and in weird places, and they were only about 2 inches long. And what I learned is your compression that you do on the top. You need to do a little bit of that on the bottom too, for sure. It's hard to do when you put a 12-inch plate because you don't want to push the floor in. So anyways, and then also I learned how to switch them from a certain kind of bat to a different kind of bat. So I've done a lot of custom orders, and I really enjoy doing them because they push me. But I also get to build stock from them, so that's kind of
neat. That's a good way to look at it. You heard it, guys. Send him your custom orders. He'd like to do them for you. Do not send them to me. Send them to John.
Oh, man.
Or I will send you to John. That's what'll happen. Awesome. So, one thing, what would you say for someone who wanted to get started in ceramics? Like, they were like, you know what, I want to make a bonsai pot for my trees. What would you say they should do? First step.
Well, first step is decide what you want it to look like and how to execute it. It sounds really generic, but a lot of people get too far into, I want to make that. And if they can just make a version of that, you know, that's really the goal with learning pottery. So I've noticed this with coaching people here. People get stuck on something they saw on social media or Pinterest, and they want to execute that. So learning the skill set is really more important, and finding some resource that makes something similar is good enough, because then you can start getting towards that after you get those skill sets.
Definitely. Perfect is always the enemy of good enough, and that can hold a lot of people back in so many different areas.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we're coming up here on the end. Do you have anything you'd like to add, or anything you'd like to ask me?
Tori, if you make it to the success level that I want you to with this, will you interview me again?
Yes, of
Let's
course.
say, or whenever, let's say a year from now, if you're still doing it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna just see how it goes. I'm just recording. I mean, like I said, I'm just out here talking to people, and I don't know if I'm gonna make a ton of these because I'm recording all of them right now to like schedule out throughout the year. So I'm gonna take probably a big break from recording. But if season 1 does really well, then I'll come back for a season 2, and we'll just go from there. I don't have a plan, a long-term plan. I just do things.
That sounds like a Potter.
I take it one electric bill at a time.
Heard. Well, it's been my pleasure, and I really appreciate you asking me for this, and best of wishes to you, and I hope to see you at Clayworks, maybe doing a demo someday soon.
Maybe. I just don't know if I have any particularly special skills that I could show the clay community. Everything I do is pretty standard. Unless they want to learn how to do too many things at once, I could bring my planner in and show them what that looks like.
Nice. Well, best wishes to you, Tori, and thanks again.
Yeah, before you head out, let everybody know where they can find you online and order custom orders and stuff and learn more about your studio.
Sounds good. Well, we have fcsclayworks.com is our website. We are planning to put up more product there from other artists very soon. And so you'll not just see my work, but other people that we like to represent, including Tori's.
Woohoo!
So look out for that at fcsclayworks.com in the shop. And we also have, in the future, we'll bring out a little bit of, what should I say, custom order work is definitely welcome, but you should be able to see some other things there, some other styles of bonsai pots on that website very soon. Thanks for checking in, and we are in Garland, Texas. If you need anything, my email is john@fcsclayworks.com.
Awesome. Everything that he just said will be in the show notes description or whatever it's called wherever you're listening. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Tori.
This podcast is brought to you by Blue Nose Trading, which is me and all my patrons. You can get early access to unreleased podcast episodes and my YouTube videos by becoming a patron of my work at patreon.com/bluenosetrading. You can find all of my current available ceramic work on my website, bluenosetrading.com. For social media links and information about today's featured artist, be sure to check out the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Remember that you have great ideas that are worth exploring, drink lots of water, and I will see y'all next time around.